Welcome to this explainer. If you've been tracking real estate at all lately, you know it's been a pretty wild ride everywhere. But today, we're zooming in specifically on Fresno County, because something really fascinating is happening out there. Home sales are actually bouncing back, and as you'll see, it's largely driven by a massive, very sudden shift in how sellers are playing the game. Let's get right into it.
Okay, to truly appreciate why these recent improvements are such a big deal, we have to start with this number right here, 30. Last year, 2025, didn't just represent a bad year for Fresno home sales, it literally marked a 30-year low. I mean, we're talking about a complete and utter deep freeze in market movement. So when we talk about the current rebound, keep in mind we're measuring it against a baseline where the market was essentially frozen solid. It really makes this recent turnaround all the more impressive, doesn't it?
So let's dive into Section 1, bouncing back from 2025 and unpacking this year-over-year rebound.
What's really interesting about this recovery is the specific kind of growth we're seeing. Joel Berner, he's a senior economist over at Realtor.com, points out that while the Central Valley isn't exactly experiencing the massive, explosive summer surges we're seeing in a few other parts of the country, Fresno County is showing absolutely definitive year-over-year improvement in the number of homes sold. It's not some crazy overnight boom, right? Instead, it's a steady, highly encouraging sign that buying activity is returning. The gears of the market are finally turning again. Which brings us to the obvious question. What exactly is driving this uptick? Well, it's a shift in seller psychology. Say goodbye to Dutch auctions. Berner uses a brilliant phrase to describe the old strategy that totally choked the market just a short time ago. He calls it the Dutch auction game. You've probably seen this happening in your own neighborhoods. It's when sellers stubbornly list their house sky high right out of the gate just to test the waters, and then they just cut the price over months until they finally snag a buyer. It was a strategy built purely on wishful thinking, and honestly, it was completely stalling the market.
But right now, we're seeing a massive shift away from that old mentality, and that is exactly what's improving home sales in Fresno today. Instead of playing that Dutch auction game and baking in 5 different price reductions from the start, sellers are adopting an entirely new approach. They're coming in at a slightly lower, way more realistic price from day one. They're showing up actually ready to sell. And because they're pricing to attract buyers immediately, real estate experts are seeing far fewer price reductions now than they were at this time last year. It is a total game changer that's pulling buyers right off the sidelines.
To really grasp why that old strategy was feeling so badly, let's look at the life cycle of an overpriced house. Step 1. The home hits the market way too high. Step 2. Because of that crazy price, it just sits there for an extended period. And Step 3. This is the real kicker. Homes that sit on the market actively become less desirable. Buyers look at the listing and instantly wonder, wait, what's wrong with it? Why hasn't anyone bought it yet? Overpricing literally hurts the seller's chances. By skipping that toxic life cycle and pricing correctly from the start, Fresno sellers are finally moving their inventory.
However, as the market moves, we have to address the younger buyer challenge and look at affordability and a rebounding market.
You hear this narrative all the time, right? The idea that young people today just don't care about owning homes, that they'd rather just rent indefinitely. Well, this quote from Joel Berner totally shuts that myth down. There is absolutely nothing fundamentally different about younger Americans that makes them less interested in homeownership. The desire hasn't faded one bit. The data clearly shows that they are strictly facing severe affordability hurdles. Purchasing a home has just become incredibly structurally difficult. They desperately want to buy, they're just dealing with a completely different math problem than their parents did.
Building on that, we can really see the core friction in the market right now. Think about previous generations. They were often able to catch up to market shifts or rising prices relatively quickly through normal wage growth or standard savings. But today's younger generations, they are facing structural affordability challenges that are so intense they literally cannot catch up to the current market fast enough. So sure, the sellers in Fresno might be pricing their homes a bit more realistically right now, but the overall financial barrier to entry is still historically high, keeping a lot of younger buyers moving at a much slower pace.
Which brings us to the end of this explainer and leaves us with one vital lingering question. Look, it is absolutely fantastic news that sellers have adjusted. Abandoning that Dutch auction game and actually pricing to sell has physically pulled the Fresno market out of a 30-year deep freeze. It completely proves that strategy matters. But the fundamental challenge remains. When will the math finally work out for the next generation of aspiring homeowners? The market itself is bouncing back, but the question of who actually gets to participate in that bounce back is something we're going to have to keep a very close eye on. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope this helped clear out exactly why things are shifting in the housing market today.